Good evening and welcome to Jones & Company. I'm your host, Brian Jones, and I have the pleasure of being joined today by a very special guest, Dr. Tim Barrett. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yes, thank you. And so today we're going to be covering a broad range of topics. As you know, Dr. Barrett is a very well-known psychiatrist, coach, mentor, and he's been an advisor to so many important groups in this country. He's also the leader of the Delta Lambda Boule. It's a chapter of the Sigma Pi Phi fraternity of the United States. And so we have a broad range of topics to discuss. And as a matter of fact, he's the author of this book, Once, The High Cost of Not Living. Very, very interesting book, very instructional for life. Yeah. And in the book, you mentioned that everything only happens once, yes. Right? And so yes. It's really important to recognize that and know how to live one's life accordingly, yes. Right? There's an ironic quote from my favorite author, Paulo Coelho, right? It's in the book, The Alchemist. It's at the very end of the book, where it says, if something happens once, it'll surely never happen again. But if it happens a second time, it will surely happen a third time.
Right.
So there's some irony in that, isn't it?
Yes, there is irony, and what he's trying to get across is his recognition of the fact that things can only happen once. Mm-hmm. In saying that if they happen again, he's saying there is a tendency in human beings for what Freud called a repetition compulsion, mm-hmm. where we develop certain habitual acts, mm-hmm. and you can look for it to be repeated. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, within that context, it still only happens once, because if it happens for the first time, let's say this is the third time I'm on Jones & Co. This is the first time I'm on Jones & Co. for the third time.
Indeed.
And that can only happen once.
Yes, I get it. You
get it?
Yes, that's right. So it really and truly, it's a unique event every single time it happens.
And I reflect to people that there's a program that I use on my computer for dictating to my computer. It's called Dragon Naturally Speaking. Mm-hmm. I dictate, it prints, and it types. I can see it coming up. I can say comma. I can say go to end of line. Whatever it gets to know my voice, and that's mm-hmm. the way you teach it to be more accurate over time, because it can give you some weird results when you say certain things. Mm-hmm. But they said the computer doesn't understand context.
That's right.
And it has to learn all the different ways you say the same word, because you cannot say the same word the same way twice.
It's impossible.
That blew me away.
That's interesting.
And that's part of the body of experience that I have that led me to some of the conclusions I drew, and understanding. We say, universally, I don't care where you go in the world, the only constant is change.
Indeed.
Okay, well, come on, why are you talking about normal? If the only constant is change, Heraclitus says you can't put your foot in the same river twice. You put your foot in, you move it out, you put it back. That's a different body of water. Because of flow. Well, nothing is more inexorable and predictable than the flow of time. Yes.
I mean, from reading the book, it seems like you've got everything figured out with life, right?
I don't.
But it's certainly, you've laid out a lot of principles,
yes,
right, that are tested and true. Where did you originate these principles from?
Boy, I've been in psychiatry since 1986. I've been practicing medicine for 48 years. Yeah. In fact, my class is looking forward to our 50th anniversary in 2024.
Amazing.
Over the years, I had two primary foci. Number one was making the best use of the limited and shrinking resource time. Okay? And number two, helping people to become their best selves. So through observation, through native whatever, intuitive whatever, and having discussions with friends that were honest and open. I was encouraged by friends, by my patients, because when I would come up with something and they'd go, oh wow, it would be an oh wow to me too, but they didn't know that. And then I would say, okay, and I walked around for months with little pieces of paper because I wasn't doing voice recordings of things that I had said that seemed to make good practical sense. And like I like to say to people anywhere, it's not rocket science, but it's complex. But it doesn't have to be complicated. You can simplify an approach to life.
Indeed.
In relation to your physicality, your spirituality, your relationships, your mental health, and your social health. You can simplify things.
That's right.
Right? And have an approach that for you delivers the best. I think we all forget, and what I'm teaching people now is each one of us is a unique creation in the universe, in the history of the universe. There'll never be another Brian Jones. Never. It isn't remotely possible. Right. So how does Brian Jones bring out the best in Brian Jones and make his contribution? I listened to something by Prime Minister Mia Mottley where she was talking about the fact that because we're in the Caribbean and we don't send people to the moon and we don't build rockets and we don't build bombs and destroy other lands and take over their lands, and because we're not the ones who are at on scale, the manufacturers, we think little of ourselves in terms of us comparing ourselves with others. And she says that Peter Minshall, who is a playmass guy, all right, he's Trinidadian Guyanese. This guy did the 96 Olympics, okay, opening ceremonies, and several another Olympics, and this is a Caribbean guy. He went to the moon.
Right.
And so she said, when are we going to understand the brilliance of our potential for creativity? All right. And she quoted a lot of our scholars and writers. Cricket players in the Caribbean. We don't know so much about cricket here, but she talks about Walcott and Weeks and Sir Garfield Sobers. I mean, if you just watch the brilliance of these guys, and they're taking on the West Indies, the powerhouse nations of New Zealand and Australia and England, and whipping them soundly in the heyday.
Yes, yes.
So we need to know how special we are. We need to know that we're a once in a lifetime once in a universe
Yes.
creation of God.
Indeed. And so on the first notion that you mentioned in terms of managing time, maximizing our time, most of our time, in the islands, in the Caribbean, we suffer from, I guess maybe we even subscribe to island time to a certain extent. Not everyone, not across the board. But is it safe to say, that we can manage our time better, I would say, right?
Everybody can.
Everybody can. And so how do we shift that mindset?
I don't want it to be shifted to the frenetic pace that you will see. I like that. Laid back. But when I have to be busy, I need to know from 2 to 5, I have to be busy. We manage time best by managing our priorities.
There you go.
So let's get done what needs to get done in a timely manner. And so it's prioritization, not an effectiveness, not efficiency. We can be efficient as much as best we can and get these things done, but they didn't need to be done today. In fact, you missed out the things that needed to be done, and now you got to scramble. All you have to do is talk to students. I don't know if you did it yourself. I'm certainly guilty of it. Waiting for time pressure to build up so I can function. Okay? What they call, jamming.
Right. Cramming.
And cramming.
Yes.
But there's no learning growth in that. The potential for retention when you do that, it is self-satisfying because, okay, let's say you very good at retaining and you pass the exam. But 2 weeks from then, what do you remember? And how have you built an understanding?
Right.
They say procrastination is the thief of time, but you can't steal time. Time is a concept. And the events of life and life itself is measured by the units of time as we have assigned them. Okay? What procrastination is the thief of opportunity. So the more you procrastinate, the more you let an opportunity come without grasping it and making full use of it.
You give up opportunities.
You
by
give up
just
opportunity.
Not being able to deal with
And
that.
they only come once, sorry. They only come once. Oh, it'll come around again. Not that one.
Yes.
Not that one.
I tend to say that opportunity cost is real, whether some people don't want to admit it or not.
Oh, yes.
And
Very real.
It's very real, indeed. And so, one thing I like to do on this show, as you know, is to make sure the audience really has an appreciation as to who you are as a person. And just knowing you, I know you have a very interesting story. In terms of your early days, you really became like a figure in society because of your athleticism, right? You dominated on the world stage in field athletics for a period of time, holding multiple titles.
At least in the Central American and Caribbean area.
Indeed.
And
right? Weren't you the first to gold medal internationally for the Bahamas?
First field event gold medal in an international competition.
Right.
But I was still in high school at the time.
You're still in high school at the time.
Yeah.
So what was it like on the early days, competing on the world scale, and what did that do to propel you into the career you are in now?
I'll tell you, at the time I didn't know. You didn't know. I was, when I was selected to go to the Central American and Caribbean Games, I was selected, I don't know what the conversation was. We had a 4 or 5 man team at the most. And I was probably selected because there was a big gap between my distance in triple jump than everybody else. So everybody's jumping, trying to jump 44, 45 feet if you really had a good jump. And I did 48.11 in high school. And I must mention Keith Parker, because Keith says, when are we going to get this 50 now? When are we? And he would always put that little seed, you know, and going and having been selected, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, because you can't undo history and have it move forward. I bruised the heel in jumping when we were up at St. Augustine's. It was dirt, and it had a couple of stones on it, and they didn't have jumping shoes then that I had access to. Maybe the Europeans did, but I didn't. And I bruised the heel, but I'm chosen. So what we worked out was, we're going to work on consistency, on stamina, and the first two phases, because you know triple jump is also called hop, step, and jump. So we're going to work on the hop and the step, but I'm going to land in the pit with this bruised heel so I don't aggravate it, hopefully give a chance to. So I never did a full jump prior to the actual competition. Wow. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Not a full jump.
Right.
And I went down. I don't know, there was something, I guess, on reflection, there was something about me that said, okay, if I'm in the competition, I'm here to win.
Right.
That's not, oh, I'm lucky to be here and all that sort of stuff. No, and it wasn't arrogant or cocky. It was just confident.
Right.
You know, and my confidence went through the ceiling when, on my first jump, the record there at the Central American and Caribbean Games, and they had the returning gold medalist from '62, a Cuban guy. The record there was 50 feet 11 3/4. Okay? My first jump at the games was 50 feet 11 1/4, a half inch behind the record. I could hear the crowd going, whoa, could still hear it now.
Right.
A gentleman, I'm trying to remember his name. I can usually look it up and see the results. But he was from Trinidad. He was throwing discus at the time. And I'm lying down after my first jump waiting for the rotation, because the first 6 are going to jump in reverse order for the second 3 jumps. So you qualify during the first 3 jumps for the order you're going to jump in for the finals. Okay. He came over to me. He said, you were at least 6-7 inches behind the board. You didn't hit the board.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Now, the board is 8 inches. 6 or 7 inches behind the board. So we done figured a jump, my first jump, is well over 51 feet. Okay? So I'm leading going into the last 3 jumps, so I jump last. And on the 4th jump, the Cuban pulls off his best jump. All right. And he jumps 51 feet, 6.5 inches.
Wow.
Yeah.
Personal best.
That's right. This is his best now. He not only breaks the record, he's leading, but we have already established the order. I will always jump after him. My 4th jump, I jumped 51 feet 4. So the 51 barrier is gone now.
Great.
Okay. And I put all my resolve and effort into this 5th jump. And I sailed to 51 feet 8.5 inches.
Wow.
Right. after which the Cuban went back down to 49 feet. I'm not laughing at him, I'm just saying.
Right.
He,
Turn the
what
tables.
we had trained for, and Keith Bach and I worked it out, we had a way that we could measure the stride length. And if I ran through 8 times and my stride length started to shorten, then I'd have to do more wind sprints to build my stamina.
I see.
Because we wanted the 6th jump to be as effective and as memorable as the first jump. Yeah.
Understood. That's tremendous. And so at that point, did you know you wanted to get into the medical field?
It had always, when I was growing up, that's all I ever talked about. That's all I ever thought about.
Right.
This, in a way, kind of was a diversion, because now I'm offered scholarships. I take the one offered by the University of Southern California, who sent their head coach to Jamaica, which was the games right after this for the Commonwealth Games.
Right.
And I remember sitting with him, and Tommy said, well, let me be in on our conversation, Tommy Robinson. Okay. And he encouraged me to accept the scholarship, and I did. But if not, I would have gone and done 6th form, biology, chemistry, physics, and gone straight into medical school.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And so you started out as a family practitioner, right? In your first,
my first 10 years.
First 10 years.
Yeah.
And so what made you make that additional leap to psychiatry?
Well, there are 2 things. I realized that people coming to see me had issues that were not physical, but they had persisted, and they would come, and my reassurance and stuff that I would give them, placebo, would be effective, but that was because their relationship with me. I didn't know how to take it further. So I was starting to get curious about that. And then I went through I don't know if to call it a low point, but a challenging time in my life where I lost focus and lost reputation in the eyes of the public, et cetera, et cetera. And coming back from that, making sure that nothing could ever assail me in that way again. Okay? You know, I did several fundamental things, and one was to shore up my spirituality, okay, and make sure that was rock solid. And then I decided, well, here's an opportunity. I started working out with a well-known obstetrician called Emilique Achara, and Horazel Simmons, who still has a practice on Collins Avenue. And we were in an office on 4th Terrace, and he was building a bigger office right across the street. The family medicine group practices out of that now.
Right.
And I said to him, I said, you know what? I'm not going to go across the street. I have an opportunity to go and study psychiatry. I'm going to take it. And you can imagine now you start studying all over again.
Right, right. At this point, what was your age when you went back to school?
37, 38.
37, 38.
Yeah.
And in retrospect,
Best move of my life.
best move of your life, right?
Best move.
I mean, I can see that from the body of work that you've published, right? You write and have taught on a broad range of topics, right? Really, like every facet of society and human life. What would you say is probably your greatest work that you're most proud of? That's something that you've...
I'll tell you, it's a little presentation I did for the human resources, and they had their annual meetings, and they gave me this topic. Now, this is a psychiatrist they're giving the topic to. Business ethics. Is it an oxymoron? That's the topic they gave me to present to them.
Okay.
And I don't know why they gave it to me, but I certainly like that kind of challenge. And that's probably some of my best work and presentation. It was only about 3/4 of an hour. But it certainly got some rave reviews from people who were there at the time.
That's very interesting. I mean, on the surface of it, it can seem oxymoronic, but the reality is ethics can't be divorced from business if you want to do good business.
That's right.
Right? And so even though it doesn't always seem that way.
Right.
And so I can see why that could have been a very interesting topic. Particularly
Very interesting, because I said what it's supposed to be and what it actually is.
Indeed.
And so I presented it from that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting when you say what's supposed to be or what actually is. It helps us deal with reality, right? And so I think that could be a good place for us to resume right after this break. And so thank you for joining us on that first segment, which was brought to you by Agio Digital, and we will be right back.